what can families or friends, what can they do to intervene if they see that someone that they love may have some of these symptoms? Tim, you want to?
Well, I would say the first person that ever tried to intervene or come up with a comment was, like we've talked before, was basically my mom, who started saying things and recognizing things, and God bless my mom, I love her to death, but if you knew my mom, I joke around that she buys everything she sees on the infomercial. And so, first of all, kind of like Joe said, and I think probably as you felt, coming back, I didn't feel any different. You know, there's nothing different about me. I didn't feel any different, didn't seem to act any different. But everybody else seemed to see there was a little bit of difference. So I just discounted everything. With my mom constantly throwing stuff up, it would either, I don't want to say lead to an argument, but I would blow it off. And I think that the first thing you have to recognize is that person or that individual is going to have to come to a point where they realize, okay, maybe something is wrong. I need to listen to these people. And I would suggest that a mother, a wife, a family member would have to, first of all, be supportive and say, okay, they're going to have to come to grips with this at a certain time. And not in a forceful way, but in a supportive way, just be there and be persistent. And then, like Joe says, this doesn't happen just overnight. I know for me, it was like a slide that gradually went, and then it reached a point where it just kind of exponentially got worse and worse. I remember leaning against walls. I remember being tired. I used to give the example of the air felt like thick molasses. Just moving around was a chore. And I used to joke around and say, God, this must be what it's like to get old. Because I didn't have any reference, sorry. I didn't have any reference point, you know. But I always remember that voice in the back of my head of my mom saying these things. And then moving away from that support system, the next support system I had was the girl I married. And I guess it really drove it home when she went to a couple of doctors, or convinced me to go to a doctor, and then actually went to a couple of doctor's appointments, and it was him asking her questions and watching her break down that the light bulb finally went on and said, okay, maybe this is something I need to look at. Because internally, I didn't feel different. You know, I couldn't see the changes in myself. So I would say, for me, I would think just that support, that understanding, and consistency.
And it sounds like participating with you in the trips, like
I would
Joe
agree,
said,
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
somebody took me there. It's not you need to go to the doctor, but they said, I'm going to the doctor with you. I'm going to be a part of this with you. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and it's information. I think it's information that the family member needs to have, but it's also information that the returning soldier needs to have as well, because there's not that much information out there. There's not, you know, I didn't know. There was nothing I couldn't put a finger on it, you know. I was checked for everything from vitamin B deficiencies to potential seizures to brain scans. You know, for 3 years I was running through the gambit. I felt like a guinea pig in some lab, you know, trying to get to the bottom of but you got to remember, PTSD was not in my vocabulary at the time. We were looking for individual symptoms, you know, trying to figure out what this individual symptoms were about, what was causing, instead of looking at something in a broader picture. So I think information and understanding of what that family member is going through will
and then supporting them with it rather than,
yeah.
Jack, for you, what advice would you have for family members that are seeing changes?
Well, to answer that question, based on what Tim just said, what reminded me of when I came back from Vietnam, I knew I was different, and I knew it was in positive ways. So my coping mechanism was to become a workaholic, and so I would work as many hours a day and be involved in a lot of civic activities, church activities, anything I could to distract myself from the feelings that I had on the inside. which accumulated anger, accumulated fear, was always just beneath the surface. But when I was home, that's when my symptoms, the mask came off, so to speak, and I found myself involved in rages and emotionally traumatizing my family without really being aware of it at the time. Mine went on for a long time until the run up to the Persian Gulf War, and then I found all my coping mechanisms finally dissipated, and went down to the VA because I didn't know where else to go, and I was suicidal. That was the beginning of my recovery process, which is still ongoing. So when we do have the opportunity to reach out to other vets as a result of the Veteran Families United outreach program, and after I make a 5-minute personal presentation of PTSD and how it affects the family members, what I notice is the wives and mothers that come up to me with that look in their eye, what can I do to help my son? What can I do to help my husband? And search for answers that I still, I see it in their eyes. I know what they're going through. I still don't feel like I have an adequate answer for that. What I'm grateful for is what Joe has done to put together that booklet that is so humble and so honest. And as we have a chance to get that in the hands of especially wives and mothers and also other vets, it seems to cut through the male ego, and it speaks to you in such an honest way that you recognize that it is the result of war, the result of combat, the result of that trauma that you internalize, and you bring the war home with you, and you don't mean to, but it's there, and denying that it's there doesn't help to solve the problem. So as I sit here and I think, fortunately, that Joe had reached the point in his recovery process that you were able to put into words and pictures the thoughts, the feelings, to help so many people, and those who have read your booklet that talk to me about it, whether the wives, mothers, or vets themselves, go, this is me. I mean, because we've sat here before and say, how do you put a face on PTSD? And you did it in such a caring, natural, logical way that it really relates and speaks to a lot of people for understanding that it is a problem, and that there are ways to cope with it. There are times it gets worse, there are times it gets better, and suppressing it, all I know is that's not a way to make it better. That only makes it worse. And so we have to collectively come together in a non-judgmental way. The hardest person not to judge is yourself, because you feel so inadequate. What's wrong with me? Nobody else seems to be having a problem with this. They suck it up and go on. And that's the surface that you see. But behind the scenes, I think we're all brothers. I mean, that's what's so humbling to me.